Hello and welcome to this Mikhail Tal video. I saw that viewers were requesting some more Mikhail Tal videos, and he's one of the greatest chess attackers of all time, former world champion. And this this game in the video takes place the year that Mikhail Tal became the world chess champion in 1960. This game happened in Stockholm, Sweden, where he played against another grandmaster. Let's see what happened here. I have the computer running, that way we can see, use that for some analysis. And Mikhail Tal, he's an attacking player. He plays what Bobby Fischer recommends, e4, which Fischer said was best by test. Because if you want to get an attack going, you may have more of a chance with e4 because the game tends to open up more and you can activate your pieces more quickly. So the Grandmaster Gideon Stallberg, playing against Tal, decides to play the French defense, which is more of a solid defensive opening. So let's see how things proceed here. Tal takes control of the center. Because if your opponent lets you place both pawns in the center, why not? You gain more space. You're attacking a lot of squares here in the center, and you have more freedom to move your pieces. So the French defense, you basically play e6 out to be able to push the d pawn to d5, and it's defended. What can white do here? Well, they could capture and go into the exchange variation. Or defend this e4 pawn that's under attack. So a lot of times they'll move the knight here or even here. So let's see what Tal does. He goes for the advanced variation. So this is an interesting variation. It kind of locks things up in the center, but it gives white more space in the center as well. And now there will be a battle happening on the flanks. Maybe this pawn will push forward to attack, or a common move in the French defense is to push here and attack. This pawn could defend. Let's see what happens. The game continues with the thematic pawn push to c5, where you use a flank pawn to attack the valuable central pawn. So what does Tal do? He defends. That way, if the c-pawn captures, he can capture with his c-pawn, and things remain even in the center as far as the pawns go, except for this advanced pawn, which gives white a little more space and prevents this knight from moving here. So, if you're going to push your c-pawn, often it's a good idea to jump the knight in behind it, and that just adds more pressure to the center. We have two attackers, but also two defenders. So Tal responds with the knight move here, helping fortify the center, getting closer to being able to castle once this light squared bishop moves. And so what does Gideon Stallberg play here? Well, he immediately brings the queen in to b6, adding more pressure to this pawn. So now we have three attackers, but also three defenders. So a lot of action is revolving around this d pawn here. Now also this queen move keeps an eye on the b2 pawn, preventing the bishop from developing at the moment, or that pawn could be captured perhaps. What will Tal do? And another point, the bishop is a little more limited. It can't go here and pin the knight, or it'll be captured by the queen. So Tal decides to play bishop to d3. So at this point, we're still in book moves. You think, well, now the queen is no longer protecting that pawn. But there's a little trap here. So, if black captures, if the knight captures, we have a series of captures, but then there's a possibility of a discovered attack on the piece that is left on d4. So let's see what happens. I know that was a lot of arrows crisscrossing everywhere. All right, so the exchanges begin. Capture, capture, and now Tall's opponent does not keep capturing because of that possibility of a check here. If the knight moves and they capture, the queen captures, then you have that check and the queen can be picked off on d4. So the opponent prevents that threat by playing bishop to d7. So now Tall decides to castle, getting his king to safety, ignoring that pawn in the center. And sure enough, it is captured. We have a capture, queen captures, and now the bishop can no longer deliver a check there. I guess well, you probably wouldn't want to move there. You go there, then you're going to have a capture, exchange of the queens. All right, let's see what happens next. The queen is centralized. We have this pawn under attack. So what does Tall do here? He ignores all that, just continues with development. So the queen drops back, and this is the first inaccuracy so far in this game. Queen to b6. Apparently a6 is a little bit better because by moving the pawn up to a6, it prevents pieces from jumping in here. It prevents the knight from jumping in there, the bishop from jumping in there. Let's see how Tall responds after this inaccurate move. He plays queen to g4. So activating the queen, keeping an eye on this pawn to prevent the bishop from moving. And the best move is played. At this point, black has the lead, ahead by a pawn. So we have an attack on the queen. Queen moves forward. Pawn is moved, and now, will Tall sacrifice his bishop here? Capturing, capture, queen would capture with check. Or is that too risky? Well, it looks like it is. The best move, according to the computer, is just to play h3. Tall decides to move the other pawn, gaining space on the queen side. And now there might still be that possibility of jumping pieces up here, backed up by that pawn. So this is the first mistake of the game. A6 was recommended, and that would have kept a pretty good edge for black. But after this mistake is made, let's see what happens. The best move is found by Tall. He drops back, discovered attack on the bishop, although that bishop is protected. But we have a fianchettoed position, and if these bishops are exchanged, it can leave weak squares around the king side, which, that may be where Tall's opponent wants to castle, as he's already moved some pieces over here on the queen side. It's a little bit more open, or moved pawns. All right, the game continues with finally this a6 move being played, but now that's an inaccuracy. Apparently, queen to d8 would have been better, offering a queen trade. So we have a capture, the best move, and a great move according to the computer. Now, the opponent captures with the knight, which is an inaccuracy. Apparently it would have been better to capture with the rook. So now the game continues with the queen attacking the rook. Rook centralizes. So let's see how things continue. Take a look at this move. Now, Tal was known as, a crazy attacker. So all of a sudden, he just goes after this pawn. The best move in the position, and now white has a pretty good advantage here. It looks like the best move would have been queen to c5, and that was not played. So now trade of the queens is declined. Tal, being a great attacker, he wanted to go ahead and keep that queen on the board. And he also leaves his knight there where it can be captured. But of course, this knight is under attack as well. So we have capture, the best moves played by both players. At this point, we have a plus 1.35 advantage for white, even though material is even. That king is just stuck in the center here. So the queen moves up. Maybe black is thinking about castling queenside. This is an inaccuracy. Better would have been bishop to e6 to fortify this isolated pawn. So now an inaccuracy by Tal. And I think this was the first inaccuracy that he played of the game so far. Recommended is b4, but maybe that's a computer move and that would be a little more difficult to find. Looks like the queen could maybe capture, but then the rooks could start attacking the queen. We have bishop to c6, inaccuracy. Queen to b4 would have been a better move. Maybe putting pressure on this pawn, perhaps. All right, so the rook grabs the open file, but this is an inaccuracy. Centralization of the queen is preferred. So now we have the rook moving to g8. Why is this being played? Maybe that king wants to move over to the king side. Also, it does line up on the opponent's king, so maybe there's a plan of pushing this pawn forward. All right, f4 is played, preventing or slowing down the push of that pawn. I mean, I guess it could still be played. Now what? Apparently queen to d4 would have been a better move. The game continues with the king heading over to f8, and this is a big mistake. Now white is almost winning. So let's see how Tal goes in for the win in this game. All right, he immediately pushes this pawn, trying to open things up in front of the king here. Knock out this pawn cover. We have a capture, the best move. Now this also leaves a half open file aimed at Tal's king. But Tal, the better attacker, he attacks first. He goes after the king. The king does not run. Instead, we have the best move played. Rook blocking, but also pinned now. The queen could go ahead and pick off this pawn. Also, this pawn could be captured. There is a little threat, maybe, of pushing forward here with a attack on that pawn on g2. So we have rook capturing, attack on the rook. Now the bishop is pinned to the queen, and it's not looking good for Tal's opponent at this point. Queen steps forward, and now we have a check. So the rook blocks, and a pawn is picked off. So Tal is, pretty much winning here. He's ahead by what? One pawn. We have 5 pawns versus 4. But notice how everything is starting to hover around black's king that is stuck here. The game continues with an offer of a rook trade. Will Tal accept that? Yes. He trades off. He's ahead by an extra pawn. So, he could probably afford to trade material. The computer didn't like that move. Instead of trading the rooks, what was the recommendation? Instead, rook takes b7, going after another pawn. But he probably didn't want his king to be chased a little bit there if the rook infiltrated into white's position. All right, an attack on the queen. The queen drops back. And now the final moves in the game, we have a check. And instead of playing the best move of running with that king, instead the rook comes forward. But this allows rook to d6, the best move in the position. After capture of the pawn, apparently this is not good. Bishop to d7 would have been better, blocking the path and possible check up here on the back rank. So queen to h8 is played, and now there's a mate in 5. This is where the game ended. There's even a mate in 1. If the king goes to e7 here, then the queen can move over to d8, delivering a checkmate. How could the game have continued if the best move was played? Rook to g8. Well, then the queen would just be captured. And after that, that's no good either for Gideon Stallberg, the grandmaster that falls here to Mikhail Tal, like so many other players. When Mikhail Tal gets a good attack going, it's just hard to stop it. Okay, what is the accuracy rating in this game? Mikhail Tal played with a 91.8% accuracy rating versus 79.2 by his opponent. And it looks like he actually fell behind a little bit earlier in the game and then just turned things around, got an attack going, and just kept that advantage until the win at the end. So 3 great moves by Tal. Inaccuracies, he had 4. His opponent had 6, though. Only 1 mistake by Tal and 4 mistakes by his opponent. And it looks like underneath my image, it says that 2450 was the rating level that Tal played at in this game versus 2000 by his opponent, which is pretty crazy because, Mikhail Tal, his rating was, probably 2600 and something. And his opponent had a 2590 rating. But, because of Tal's crazy attacking, the opponent was kind of stunned and not sure what to do exactly, how to respond in the most correct way. And you see that resulted in a much lower rating average or level that he played at in this game. So 100% accuracy in the opening by Tal and his opponent. Middle game accuracy was 88.2 for Tal, but only 71.1 for his opponent. And they didn't even make it to the end game. So there you have it. Another game by the incredible attacking player and former world champion Mikhail Tal, who became world champion in 1960, the year this game was played. And that's when Tal defeated Botvinnik. But they had a rematch, I believe, in 61. And Mikhail Tal ended up losing his title to Botvinnik. But Tal did have some health problems. So when he was healthy, he was definitely a force to be reckoned with, an incredible chess player. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave any comments, like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.